And now it's time for Lefties Losing It. Sunday was International Women's Day, so in honour of that, let's begin with some unhinged lefty ladies single-handedly setting back the case for women's rights. Here's a group of them gathering in a New York park to collectively scream. Yep, really helping to dismantle the patriarchy there, ladies. Meanwhile, everyone's favourite feminist, Kamala Harris, managed to make American civil rights activist Jesse Jackson's funeral, well, all about her.
I predicted a lot about what's happening right now. I'm not into saying I told you so, but we did see it coming.
But Kamala wasn't the only Democrat making a fool of themselves at the Reverend's farewell. Former US President Joe Biden seized his moment to tell a mostly black audience he's smarter than them.
If I told you all earlier when I was a kid I had a cleft palate or a club foot, none of you would have laughed. But it's okay to laugh at stuttering. I'm not being critical of you, but think about it. It's the one place where people think you're stupid. Oh, really? I'm a hell of a lot smarter than most of you.
And the crowd just laughed. Yet apparently, Trump is the racist. But the Democrats weren't done yet. Another former president using the funeral to take a cheap shot at MAGA supporters.
Everywhere we see greed and bigotry being celebrated and bullying and mockery masquerading as strength.
Why not just call them a basket of deplorables again? The Reverend's son, Jesse Jackson Jr., wasn't having a minute of the politicization of his father's funeral.
I listened for several hours of 3 United States presidents who do not know Jesse Jackson.
But now to another committed anti-Trumper, Whoopi Goldberg, who actually claimed on The View Joe Biden could have fixed illegal immigration if only Donald Trump had let him.
Because, you know, Joe Biden, I remember during the speech to the nation, said, we have a good border plan that is bipartisan.
Yeah. It failed.
No, it didn't fail. The Republicans were told by you-know-who, don't do this, block this. So that's the first one.
Don't you love how they can't even bring themselves to say Trump's name? It's as if he's Voldemort out of Harry Potter. Meanwhile, Democrat strategist James Carville is embracing his Trump derangement syndrome in this truly insane rant.
You fat Trump, if you listen to this, you listen good, because what I'm getting ready to say is what a lot of people in this country speak for, who I speak for. And I speak for a lot of people. You hear me, you fat I got Trump derangement syndrome. I hate and you know what? I don't want to get rid of it. I don't want to get better. I want to get worse. I want to hate him more. We want more. We want to hate the son of a so much that we can't see straight.
Someone please fetch that man's mouth some soap. But back to International Women's Day, and I want to leave you with these scenes from Sydney, where Iranian-Australian protesters standing up for the human rights of Iranian women told a group of pro-Palestinian gatecrashers in Persian where they could put their flags. Now that's some screaming I can get behind. Well, Iran has ended the speculation surrounding its next leader, naming Mojtaba Khamenei as its new Islamist dictator. after his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed in joint US-Israel strikes. But Donald Trump has warned Iran's new Ayatollah shouldn't make himself too comfortable in his new office, telling ABC America, if he doesn't get approval from us, he's not going to last long. I don't want people to have to go back in 5 years and have to do the same thing again, or worse, let them have a nuclear weapon. Israel has also vowed to go after the new supreme leader and those who appointed him. For more on this, let's now bring in Newsweek senior editor-at-large Josh Hammer. Josh, great to see you. You'd have to imagine the new Ayatollah would be feeling slightly nervous at this point. How long do you give his leadership?
Yeah, I don't think there's much in the way of job security or job tenure when it comes to Ayatollah these days in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Frankly, I think back to the post-October 7th Hamas leadership, or frankly, the Hezbollah leadership for the matter. Look, when the United States and our ally Israel, when these two countries go to war, they mean what they say and they act upon what they say. Already, you've actually seen some interim ayatollahs after the Khamenei assassination a little over a week ago. You've already seen some interim ayatollahs who have already been taken out. Of course, earlier this past week in the Iranian city of Qom, where you had the Assembly of Experts, they called it, that were meeting to elect a new ayatollah. Israel essentially blew up the entire meeting. You had dozens of dead experts of the Assembly of Experts. So I would not place a particularly large wager that the son of Khamenei is going to last on the job for a very long time. As far as who he is himself, he frankly has actually not been particularly outspoken. He's been somewhat behind the scenes, somewhat more of a shadow figure. Certainly, we can surmise a lot based on his last name, Khamenei, and we believe, based on what we can tell, that he is just as some people are speculating, actually potentially even more hardline than his father, who, of course, is one of the most brutal, despotic Islamist thugs ever. I mean, literally in the entire history of mankind. So this doesn't bode particularly well for the future of Iran, but as I said, if I were a betting man, which I'm not, but if I hypothetically were a betting man, to be very candid with you, I probably would bet, I would say he's probably going to last about a week or two tops on the job if I had to place a wager, honestly.
Yeah, I wouldn't be buying too much new furniture if I was him. It might all need to be redecorated soon. Look, President Trump has also responded to accusations the US was responsible for an apparent strike on an Iranian girls' school, which destroyed the school and it killed scores of children. Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One that the Iranian regime were the ones responsible. Here he is.
Did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
Based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Was that true, Mr. Hickson? It was Iran who did that.
We're certainly investigating.
We're still investigating.
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
But Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told NBC News that it couldn't have been them because, get this, Josh, they don't kill their own people.
President Trump said Iran is responsible for that strike. What is your response to what the president said?
Well, it is funny. It is our school. These are our students, our girls. And they are attacked by an American fighter, a jet fighter, and they have been killed. Why Iran is responsible? Have we started this war? Have we attacked our own people?
Oh, well, Josh, yeah, I think we can say they have attacked their own people. Some estimate the regime have killed now more than 36,000 of its own people in recent months alone. So no one's possibly buying this, are they?
So first of all, I might be in the minority on this, but I am of the opinion that when your country is at war, like literally actively at war, you probably should not be giving interviews to high-ranking members of the country that you are at war with. So I don't really know why Kristen Welker and NBC News are deigning to give this interview in the first place there. But to your point, yeah, actually, the fact that Iran slaughtered tens and tens of thousands, we don't even know the exact number there. I mean, estimates vary from as quote-unquote low as 25 to 35,000 to potentially as high as, God forbid, 80 to 100,000. We have no idea. But the fact they slaughtered so many, in literally probably the single worst instance of a government turning its weapons on its own people in the entire 21st century. I mean, this harkens back, frankly, to the killing field of Cambodia under Pol Pot or the Maoist struggle sessions and all the 1950s 1960s turmoil in communist China, the Soviet gulags there. I mean, this is 20th century totalitarianism style brutal Islamist thuggery. So no one is buying this. Precisely, no one is buying this there. And there's also an additional point to make here too, which is these radical Islamic factions, whether they are non-state actors like Hamas and Hezbollah or state actors like Iran, do this over and over and over again. I have a long enough memory where I remember just in the first week or two of the post-October 7th, 2023 war in Gaza, there was this whole controversy as to whether Israel actually bombed a hospital. Joe Biden actually shamefully got in on the blood libel. And it turns out that it was a Palestinian rocket that didn't make it to Israel, and it landed actually not even on the hospital. It actually landed in a parking lot next to the hospital. So this has happened before, where you have a lot of Western media that immediately gobble up and say, oh, the United States is to fault, or Israel or some other ally is to fault there. But no, more often than not, in a situation like this, it is the Islamist state or non-state actor that's responsible, for the very simple reason that Pete Hegseth said there on Air Force One, which is that the United States is a first world country bound by the rule of law, and we do not target civilians. And moreover, we're pretty accurate when it comes to our weaponry.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Iran and its proxies definitely have form on this matter. So I know who I trust in this situation, but we'll see what comes out of the investigation. Now, in that same exchange aboard Air Force One, the president was also asked to justify a US strike on an Iranian desalination plant, and boy, did he unleash.
They are among the most evil people ever on earth. They cut babies' heads off. They chop women in half. What they did, take a look at October 7th. Take a look at what they've done over the last 47 years. So I know nothing about a desalinization plant other than to say, if they're complaining about a desalinization plant, we complain about the fact that they shouldn't be chopping babies' heads off, okay?
Josh, what is with the left media and their fixation with defending or finding ways to minimize what this brutal authoritarian regime is doing here?
The brutal truth, and I genuinely do not think that this is overstating the matter, is that there are a lot of folks on the left who actively root for actors like the Islamic Republic of Iran. Frankly, some of this actually is explicit out in the open. For instance, there are various left-wing student groups, like this horrific group at Columbia University, New York City, called CUAD, Columbia University Apartheid Divest, or something like that there. They were actively cheering on Iran's missile and drone response after the initial bombing run between the United States and Israel last Saturday. You had various other Students for Justice in Palestine chapters that were showing video clips of the retaliatory Iran missiles and drones that were fired at Israel, the UAE, Kuwait, lots of other Arab countries there, and celebrating it. So there is a subversive fifth column. There's a fifth column here in the United States. And this is not just an American phenomenon, unfortunately, because the organized political left, for really as far back as we have had this right-left political divide, because our contemporary right-left political divide goes back roughly to the French Revolution. That's where this nomenclature actually comes from. And going back to the French Revolution, to the Jacobins, to Robespierre, the Reign of Terror there, the left has had a fetish for political violence, for not just settling scores through the ballot box or through legislation or bills there, but they actually have a love of violence. That is why some of the great tyrants in the 20th century, like Stalin infamously, Mao Zedong in China, these are ardent, at their core, Marxist, Leninist, left-wingers there. And, as the late, great David Horowitz said, inside every progressive is a totalitarian waiting to get out. So I think a lot of these folks look at these totalitarian regimes like Iran, and it's not only that they're trying to downplay their atrocities. I think a lot of them are genuinely rooting them on. That sounds pretty harsh. That sounds pretty callous there, but it's my genuine read of the situation there. It's very difficult, frankly, for me to look at things other than to look at things like the Barack Obama nuclear deal, for instance, and conclude that they are trying to do anything other than to arm the world's #1 state sponsor of terror.
Look, I have to agree with you. We've seen very similar scenes on our campuses here in Australia, as I'm sure you'd be aware, and on our streets. Openly, people holding flags of these terrorist leaders, including the Ayatollah. So it's hard to disagree with your assessment, I think, unfortunately. Look, one consequence of what's happening in the Middle East is obviously the volatility of the oil market now. And to offset that, the Trump administration has turned Venezuela into a significant oil supplier. higher. Global oil prices have soared past $100 a barrel amid Israeli strikes on Iranian oil infrastructure and disruptions in the Hormuz Strait. Now, Josh, Venezuela has gone from being an adversary to the United States to an ally under Trump.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable, actually. Just this past week, I believe it was on Thursday or Friday, the United States actually opened its diplomatic facility in Caracas, Venezuela, for the first time since 2019. So this is pretty remarkable stuff. Look, the current women leading Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, is definitely a socialist in the Hugo Chavez, Nicolas Maduro mode. But she's apparently willing to play ball with the U.S. when it comes to our petroleum, oil, natural gas companies going in there to try to take advantage of those resources there. It's true that oil prices are rising on the global crude market. There's been a rise of roughly 50% since the war started, and that's politically, that's not good for Republicans here in the United States when it comes to a midterm election year. I could be wrong about this. I have a sneaking suspicion that Donald Trump has a card here up his sleeve. That card could potentially be as simple as just tapping into what we in the States refer to as the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which is something that we basically store a lot of oil and natural gas, essentially for situations exactly like this, to try to contain price fluctuations there. I am hearing rumors, and it's just rumors, and I don't typically like to deal in rumors. I am hearing rumors that the United States might make some sort of strong play to potentially seize an Iranian island near the Strait of Hormuz, trying to essentially open those lines of shipping there. I think that think frankly that the United States Navy is not done when it comes to letting the price of oil get too far out of hand there, because energy is ultimately the mother's milk of really all goods there. When energy prices soar, the prices of virtually every other good soars as well, because you rely on shipping and planes and trucks and everything to get all the groceries in your store and your goods and your services. It all comes down to energy there. So I suspect that Donald Trump is going to have a trick up his sleeve here. It's worth noting as well, by the way, that even though what I said is true, that oil has spiked since the war started, it would have spiked a lot more had Donald Trump and his administration not engaged in prolific offshore and onshore oil and natural gas drilling just over the course of the past year after the Biden-Harris regime shut down a lot of those wells there. So it's not ideal right now. Again, I think it's going to get better, but it would have been a lot worse were it not for much more of this drilling that they've done already.
Yeah. Look, before I have to let you go, let's turn our attention quickly to New York, because a pair of ISIS-trained extremists have been charged with allegedly hurling an improvised explosive device at the mayor's official residence during a protest, which police say would have caused serious death or injury had it detonated. Law enforcement sources close to the case have told the New York Post the two suspects had allegedly self-radicalized in recent years, having traveled to Turkey and other terror training hotspots. But in his reaction to the incident, Mayor Zoran Mamdani decided not to mention them at all, instead releasing a statement blaming Josh white supremacy. He wrote, "White supremacist Jake Lang organized a protest outside Gracie Mansion rooted in bigotry and racism. Such hate has no place in New York City. It is an affront to our city's values and the unity that defines who we are." Josh, how the heck did he manage to turn the threat of radical Islam into an attack on white supremacy?
There's a very simple answer to that question, which is that Zoran Mamdani is sympathetic to radical Islam. That is the unequivocal answer to your very astute question. Zoran Mamdani is a man who founded his Students for Justice in Palestine chapter back when he was in Bowdoin College in Maine years ago. SJP, as is frequently known, is essentially a Muslim Brotherhood, a Hamas front group, openly orchestrating, openly inciting for murderous jihad and anti-Western civilization subjugation on America's university campuses. This is a man who, on the first day of Ramadan, just over the past couple of weeks, on the very first day, spoke at an infamous mosque in New York City that has long been on the FBI's radar for having close ties to, you guessed it, the Iranian regime itself. In fact, the imam of that very mosque, after Mamdani said his remarks and exited stage left, the imam then came to the lectern and said into the microphone that he hoped that the sword will ultimately be the final fate of all infidels, essentially wishing death for infidels. Mamdani spoke at that mosque just minutes prior to the imam saying that there. So this is the guy who not only does not have a problem with radical Islamic jihad, he has, I'm not saying he's personally been involved, he's not strapping on suicide vests or anything there, but this is a man who has been a cheerleader. Most recently, it just came out this past week that his wife was very active, shall we say, on Instagram and social media and liking a lot of posts not just downplaying October 7, 2023, celebrating it, saying that the wanton murder of 1,200 people, the 250 folks that were 300, whatever it was, that were absolutely tragically murdered at the Nova Music Festival, all the mass rapes, the pillages, the kidnappings there, the execution of Holocaust survivors, the butchering of babies there. She was celebrating it. This is sick, demented stuff there. Frankly, I look at this, and as someone who was from the New York area originally myself, I sometimes just throw my hands up and I say, how did New York get here? Really, how did it actually get here? It wasn't that long ago that New Yorkers were debating the infamous Ground Zero Mosque, and they defeated the Ground Zero Mosque. This was an attempt to build a mosque near Ground Zero at the site of the Al Qaeda that brought down Twin Towers there. We've gone from this to that there, and it's ultimately just truly tragic stuff for the city of New York.
It is. Look, I'm concerned for people there, but they have voted him in, so we'll see what happens. Josh Hammer, appreciate your time, as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.